This beautiful gospel story on the road to Emmaus is a favorite of mine, maybe of yours too. And I love its pensive quality, the calm, reflective way in which the writer of Luke tells of the journey of these two downhearted disciples who walked with Jesus along that road that Easter morning, not knowing it was Jesus. Luke tells us that Emmaus is a village 7 miles from Jerusalem. But I find it quite interesting that even though it appears on nearly every pilgrim map of the Holy Land, and we paid a visit there on a parish pilgrimage in 2023, still many scholars are convinced that the real Emmaus has never been found. There are 4 contestants, and we visited a place called Abu Ghosh, which features a church built by the Crusaders in the 12th century. The church, now restored as the Church of the Resurrection, which is staffed by a monastery of Benedictine monks next door, remains one of the finest examples of Crusader architecture. I think we can think of Emmaus as representing every place, where not just one place, and of the road to Emmaus as every road that we have traveled. And isn't it wonderful to think that no matter what road we travel in life, Jesus is our companion. Even if we don't recognize him, he is no less a companion for that. However, for a woman living in Davidsonville, North Carolina, the sight was quite unsettling. Driving by the local Episcopal church, she noticed a vagrant sleeping on a bench outside. And so she called the police, who came to investigate. And it turned out to be a false alarm. The homeless man on the bench wasn't a man at all. It was a statue. It was created by a well-known Canadian artist, Timothy Schmaltz. And it's a life-size sculpture of a man sleeping on a park bench, completely covered by a blanket. And the only parts of him that are exposed are his bare feet. But if you look closer, you'll see something else. The feet bear the scars of crucifixion. The homeless man on the bench is Jesus. And this artwork is entitled Jesus the Homeless. And the artist challenges our perceptions of Christ and of our perceptions of the poor. And it invites us to see Christ even among the homeless. The artist has said that his inspiration was found in St. Matthew's Gospel. Whatever you did to the least of these, you did to me. But after coming across this 2014 story from North Carolina and reflecting on our gospel reading today from the writer of Luke, I'm also reminded of what happened on the road to Emmaus. And I have to wonder, if we saw Jesus today, would we even know it? Would we recognize him? Luke describes the blindness of the disciples on the road to Emmaus. Their eyes were prevented from recognizing him. Now we can speculate why. They were probably disillusioned and confused. Maybe they were even angry. Their great hope, Jesus, we hope he'd be the one who would drive out the Romans out of the country, the one who had raised the dead, made the blind see and the lame walk, was dead. Worse, he had been brutally executed like a common criminal. And it all seemed so senseless. Maybe they lost faith. Maybe they couldn't recognize what was staring at them in the face or who was staring them in the face because they had given up. They had lost their way, literally lost their sense of direction. They were leaving Jerusalem and the rest of Jesus' disciples and were headed someplace else. Or perhaps, I think it goes even deeper than that. The 5th century Saint Augustine of Hippo has said that he believes their eyes were closed because their hearts were closed. And he preached a sermon on this passage. And he said that the whole story pivots around one critical moment. Everything begins to change once these disciples make the choice to invite Jesus to stay with them. And what was missing, Augustine suggested, was what Jesus had been teaching all along: compassion, charity, love of neighbor, even when the neighbor is a stranger. And he once said, "When you receive another, you receive him. Let a hungry Christ be fed here, a thirsty Christ given a drink, a naked Christ be clothed, a foreigner Christ be taken in, an ill Christ be visited." He continues, "These are needs that arise on the journey. This is how we are to live in a world where Christ is in need." And so when the disciples on their journey to Emmaus welcomed Christ, a Christ without a home, a Christ in need, everything changed. And each of us, I think, is on our own journey, like the disciples headed to Emmaus. Each of us carries with us our own uncertainties, our doubts, our worries. We grow anxious about our futures, about our families, about our jobs, our schools, about where we are headed in life. We're anxious about our country and our world. And like those disciples, we could easily be blinded by our anxieties, our angers, our fears. There are things that happen when we can't believe our own eyes. We fall into despair and forget how to love. But we need to remember this: we do not walk alone. And this is part of the beautiful hope-filled message of Easter, the lesson of Emmaus. He is risen. Jesus is still with us. He walks with us on our journey, and he will stay if only we invite him in. The Easter season, this time of rebirth and renewal, is the perfect time to open the door. And it can be tempting in these first weeks of Easter to forget that, to take the resurrection for granted. After a few days, we throw out the wilted flowers. We certainly did it here in the church, and the plastic grass in our baskets. And we just get on with our lives as if it was just another holiday and it's over. But it isn't. We just spent 40 days of Lent preparing for this feast, a feast on our church calendar that spreads 50 days. And so this season is so important because it is the defining event of salvation history, the pivotal moment in our lives as Catholic Christians. And so do we recognize that? Do we recognize him? Again and again, and the writer of Luke reminds us that Jesus comes to us in startling, unexpected ways. As a baby in the manger, as a stranger on the road, in bread that is broken and blessed and shared, as we will do in a few moments. But since this 2014 story about this statue has become increasingly familiar, it has sparked debates, discussions, garnered significant media attention. The artist has installed over 50 statues around the world, including one in Capernaum, where Jesus taught and healed many people, and another at the Vatican, where it was blessed by Pope Francis. There's even a copy of the statue in one of our city parishes, St. Vincent de Paul, which is right next to City Hall. The Christ who was unrecognizable in North Carolina has gained recognition around the world. And this work of art is inviting people to see Jesus in a totally different way and challenging us to see those around us differently too. As St. Augustine put it, our world is a hungry Christ to be fed, a naked Christ to be clothed. And so, sisters and brothers, pray with me during this Eucharist and certainly during this week to have eyes to see this Christ in all those we encounter. And may we always invite the risen Christ to be our companion on the journey, as long as that journey may last, wherever the road may take us. Amen.